Being here once again. I really appreciate that you take time out of your busy lives to come and join me, to be here together, to commune together. Last week I spoke about the four kingdoms of consciousness, and this week I'm going to speak about experience. In fact, my talk is called Are You Experienced? Which I took directly from Jimi Hendrix, except I mean something completely different. I've been thinking a lot about my journey, all the different steps along the way, and I thought that and it occurred to me that you know, for beginners, intermediate, advanced, however long you've been walking this path, it may give you some support, some light to see how this path unfolds for most folks. Like in the beginning, right? I was talking last week about to me. You just feel like a victim, like life's happening to you. You don't have any sense that you have any power, any presence, anything to go forward with until the day you do. And then you have an experience. You have this experience, however it came about in your life, all of a sudden, at whatever age you were, you realized you had some power. You had some say over what happened to you. And that may have been, if it was not early in life, like it wasn't, you know, I went through a rather traumatic childhood around trying to stand up for myself. So it wasn't till later that, till I was into my teens before I realized that I could actually take action in the face of whatever circumstances were confronting me, that I, had say. So whenever that time was for you, that was an experience. And from that experience, because that's what we build on, right? We build on our experiences. I mean, that's so key to spiritual growth, is the experiences we have in that. But if we get caught up in thinking, when something happens that is out of the ordinary, or shows some sort of spiritual presence or power or whatever. I was walking with Troy yesterday in Elk Island, and so if any of you ever want to join me out there, it's really a stunning. It's 10 kilometers total hike. So it isn't for everybody. But if you're up for that kind of thing, I would love to bring you out there and show you some of my favorite spots. And so I was out there with Troy yesterday, and he was telling me how before his daughter was born, he sat and visualized what she'd be like when she was about 4. And that he was amazed that she is exactly like he visualized. And the thing is it would be easy, if that's the only experience he ever had, to think, oh, it's just a coincidence. That he didn't really was the co-creator in that. And so that's part of what happens when we begin this journey, right? We start having these experiences, and maybe your first experience of through me was at a workshop, or maybe it was dropping some drug or whatever. You have this experience. And then I have had a lot of workshop experiences where I feel like I've transformed myself. I'm different now. And then I leave that, and the next thing, in a week goes by, 2 weeks go by, and the high that I felt from the workshop starts to fade. It starts to fade. Until all of a sudden, you're back feeling exactly how you felt before the workshop happened. Am I the only one that's had that experience? That's what happens when we first get into this stuff. We start to recognize there's something greater than ourselves, right? We go to these workshops, or you come here and you get this idea there's something greater than ourselves going on. And at the beginning, maybe we don't fully realize that it's us, it's our bigger us, but there's this thing, and so we want to open and be with that. And so maybe we start doing some spiritual practice we learned at the workshop, but we don't have a lot of support around us because the rest of our lives is going on with the drama and the drama and the drama, and all of a sudden we're just so busy working and trying to get through the day that we completely forget the spiritual practice that had us have that event occur. And then that experience starts to fade. And so the key here that I have found is immersing. It's an immersive thing to really have true and permanent shift. Troy was saying how he was sometimes a skeptic and sometimes a believer. And I was saying that those two things are not in opposition the way they might sound. Because we want true experience here. I've heard a lot of people say, what you need to do is act as if. And I'm here to say no. Don't do that. Because when you act as if, you can kid yourself. And so then you're not fully grounded in when something really does happen to get the difference. I've done over around 100 sweat lodges. It was a time in my life in Asheville when I was doing almost 3 a week. So I was going and sweating with the Lakota, and then I was sweating with the Arapaho, and then I was sweating with the Cherokee, all in the same week. And I was just making the rounds because I just loved it so much. And the thing about a sweat lodge is you can't fake it. It's hot in there. And if you're in a really good sweat lodge, it's really hot in there. And you can't strength through it. You can't tough it out. You'll find your face in the dirt. The only way to get through a sweat lodge really is to transform, is to actually rise to a different space. And so I didn't know that at first. First I'm just doing what everybody else does in life, which is try to tough it out, try to force my way through, and kept finding my face in the dirt. Like, oh my God, it's so hot in here. And then the one day came when I was preparing actually I was being prepared for a vision quest, which is where you go out into the desert for 4 days, 4 nights, no food, no water, no shelter. I've done that twice. And so these Lakota sun dancers took me into the lodge. And we're in the lodge. And at first it started feeling so hot, but I'm in my prayers, just the way that they taught me, the practice, the spiritual practice. In fact, at that point, I'd taken, maybe 7 or 8 different science of mind classes. So I was immersed. And I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, it doesn't feel hot anymore. All of a sudden, I'm just sitting there and going, wow, this is what happened? Really, what happened? All of a sudden, it's like, are they not pouring the steam on the rocks anymore? Did the rocks cool down? What happened? And the round ended, the door goes up, and these big sun dancers, guys who have been hooked to the tree, faces in the dirt, every one of them, just staring wide-eyed at me sitting there, because they thought that was one of the hottest sweat lodges they'd ever been in. I didn't feel a thing. And when you have an experience like that, you know. And for me, it really got me getting deeper into classes, because I was like, this stuff is really working. I'm getting to experience life at an entirely other level. Things are happening here that I don't normally get to experience. And so that's what's possible when we immerse ourselves in these teachings. That's what's possible when, instead of, like Ash was saying, she showed up at Agape for 2 years, and then when things went south in her life, she was unprepared because she hadn't taken class. And then she realized it and dived in. And so I'm not, so it may sound like I'm up here selling the idea of getting into class, but I'm telling you, if you want to have your life transform like mine has, where people are saying, I was sitting with Trevor, we were having a coffee date, and by the way, I love these coffee dates. So any one of you wants to give me a holler and say, hey, let's get together, let's sit down, please. I really enjoy it. So I'm sitting there on Friday with Trevor, and he's telling me how he gets up at 4 a.m. every day to do his spiritual practice before he goes to work, because it really sets up his day. Now, I'm not up here recommending 4 a.m. I would never do it at 4 a.m., but that may work for you, if you're a morning person. This is my early morning, being here with you guys on Sunday. But the key is the immersiveness of it. And his wife says the same thing to him that my wife says to me, is you're not the same person you were 5 years ago. And that's what's possible, to actually shift who you are being. And I promise you, if you shift who you are being long enough, what happens is then the external actually shifts. It changes. It becomes something you never even imagined. That's what's really possible here, is to experience life in a way that you haven't. We go along experiencing life based on how we are, who we are being. And then we have these experiences and we think, oh, this is the way life is. And no, actually it's not. But if you're so positive it is, then that's what you got. And that's what I keep learning for myself, right? Like I mentioned to you guys how I think I did. I think I brought up to you how I was thinking, maybe I didn't. Well, anyway, I'm going to say it again. However that went. So I realized that I had been defining myself as somebody who doesn't sit well. Have I mentioned that before? And I realized I didn't want that definition about me anymore. And so for the past few weeks, this is new. This is my newest thing. Is I've been practicing sitting longer and longer and longer, just sitting. Just so I can redefine myself, because that's what it takes. Right? We can say, oh, I want to be different. Now, in my spiritual growth, there was a time, and maybe you can relate to this, where once you start down this path, you're really upset about something. And you're acting out on that upset. But in your head, you're saying to yourself, calm down. Calm down. It's really okay. But you keep acting out. Am I the only one that's happened to? That's one of the stages of getting here. And I'll tell you why that happens, if you're wondering. Because our mind memory is not as powerful as our body memory. Our mind memory is not as powerful as our heart memory. And that's why the saying in this movement is, what you embody manifests. There's another saying called change your thinking, change your life, and that's really great for beginners, but that really doesn't get you there if you want a real and permanent change. It's a starting point. It has been my experience that it's great in how the science of mind gets you thinking about things differently, gets you perceiving differently, gets you into practicing that perception change. That's important. But the idea is using that to continue to deepen and dig in until it shifts in here. And if you're not acting as if, and if you're truly, fully honest with yourself, when it shifts in here, you know it. It's like, wow. And you're different. You're not the same person anymore. You're different. And that difference is like, it's more than a seed. It's like a tree that continues to grow as long as you continue to nurture it. Have you ever found yourself wanting to get good at something? So you practiced it and practiced it and practiced it. You got good at it. You got to a particular point and then you stopped practicing. Am I the only one? That can happen here too. A lot of folks come in here, they're in pain. They do these practices until the pain goes away, and then they go. It happens a lot. And then they find out the pain comes back, and so they're back. That happens. But there's this other way of doing this, which is once you got that tree growing in you, once you got this new way, once you've had that first experience of, wow, I handled that situation way different than I ever have before. Once you have that experience of being in a situation that you've been in before where you've handled it badly, and all of a sudden you didn't just force yourself to handle it better, but something in you was so different that of course you handled it different because you were different. Man, at that level, that's when things really start to change. But you got to keep nurturing that tree. You got to keep immersing. That's why taking a class like Foundations again and again, getting back to basics, is a great idea. Getting in the next class that's offered. In January, I'm putting together a 4-week class on intuition, because I have been practicing what actually I call soul's intention at this point. I have been practicing working with my soul's intention so long and so regularly that it is never, ever wrong. It guides me perfectly. And I know how I did it because I've been doing it regularly. And so in January, I'm going to, for those who are interested, teach that in a 4-week class. But that's the key here, is to immerse. And folks go, well, I got such a busy life and I got all these things I want to do. And this is where the idea of Wu Wei comes in. I know how busy our lives can get. I know about that. I've been there. But the deeper I get into this teaching, I find that I don't have to be so busy to get even better results. And the reason you're busy is because of the results you want to get in your life. Am I wrong about that? Are you busy just to be busy? Odds are against that. The odds are you're busy because you want to achieve. You want to have a life that feels joy-filled. And that's what we're here all about. to teach spiritual principles, to create joy-filled lives. That's why we're here. We're here to commune together, to awaken our consciousness through spiritual community. That's why we're here. And we come together to remember, like I was talking about last week, remember. But it's so easy to forget. It's so easy. That's the thing about it. It can happen in a heartbeat. But the longer you immerse yourself in this, the longer you are willing to dig deep, to keep practicing, to keep moving forward, those times of forgetting get shorter and shorter and shorter, and remembering gets longer and longer and longer. It really works that way. And that's what I hold for each and every one of you. That's what I want for each of you. To have that sense of remembering at the worst of times. To have that sense of remembering at the best of times. That whatever the circumstance is, transforming yourself transforms the circumstance. This is what's possible through this teaching that I love, that I have immersed myself in, and that I know for you can support you in having a life that is so joy-filled. It is beyond your imagination the way it is beyond mine. Thank you. I love you.